everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Esports Recruitment Panel. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists to you guys, and then we'll have Neil Malvone, our moderator, kick it off. So we'll start with Neil. He's the Executive Vice President here at CSMG, and he also is the Vice Chairman of the National Junior College Athletic Association Esports. We'll start with Thomas. Thomas O'Keefe is the head esports coach at Five Towns College and works with the conferences and institutions within both the traditional sports and esports ecosystem, providing organizations with growth strategies and revenue generating opportunities. Thomas is also our manager of brand partnerships here at CSMG. Next, we'll go to Patrick Klein. He is the Chief Strategy Officer at eFuse. Patrick serves as the Chief Strategy Officer for eFuse, which is a web and mobile application service that provides a social platform and event coordination services for the esports industry. Patrick, along with his co-founder Matthew Benson, have quickly established eFuse in the sports industry. Yentl, who is the esports marketing and partnerships manager at iBUYPOWER, works with iBUYPOWER to incorporate corporate sponsorships and brands such as Intel, AMD, Microsoft, Western Digital, LG, and Toyota Racing development. Additionally, she assists in building partnerships with universities for esports programs. Yentl was the recipient of Intel's Marketing Excellence Award for Collegiate Esports and University Partnerships. Our last panelist will be Jeff White, who is the NJCAA Chief Legal, Diversity, and Equity Officer. Jeff has helped create the NJCAAE, where he continuously serves as the Executive Director and plays a vital part in the growth of the association, including obtaining STEM certification and developing brand partnerships for the NJCAAE. And Neil, I will pass it off to you to kick off the panel.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on our HV GamerCon Esports Recruitment Panel. HV GamerCon is an annual event created by the ECAC in conjunction with the Hudson Valley region of New York. And this is our third year hosting the event. Unfortunately, our first year doing it online. So for those of you that can join us on Saturday and Sunday this weekend, you will see 24 different teams competing for 3 gaming titles to win national championships on behalf of the ECAC. Those are the schools that had qualified for the spring. But again, due to COVID, we're going to be hosting it this weekend, unfortunately, virtually and not in person. I'm grateful to be here today. I'm also grateful for our panelists. This is an exciting and interesting topic as collegiate esports continues to grow. And to take time out of their busy schedules, I really do thank you for doing that for us. I also wanted to thank Intel Inspires, our sponsor for the panel today. Intel Inspires is a series of esports events and showcases to create that essential pipeline for high schoolers to get from high school competition to college to pros. They feature titles such as Fortnite, League of Legends, and Rocket League. Their online tournaments have over 5,000 high school players and a virtual combine where colleges can network with top high school players and leaders in collegiate esports. They offer $250,000 in scholarships to the players and up to 50 colleges who will recruit the players through Intel Inspires. So again, for those of you that are paying attention from colleges or from conferences and are looking at esports as an opportunity to grow your enrollment, recruitment is a big part of it, and Intel Inspires in connection with the AVGL are now offering scholarships and more recruiting opportunities. So having said that, let's segue into this panel and really get some expertise from Patrick, Jeff, Yentl, and Thomas. Patrick, let me start with you, and if you could just talk a little bit about your perspective on recruiting, which I think is unique because you come from a traditional sports background. And what I've been telling people in academia and in this property aggregation we've been doing is that a lot of esports can find similarities from traditional sports.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on. And I think that to provide some context, the ability to create processes that can continue to grow. There's some aggregation, there's some unification. And I think that what makes the comparison so legit is we all want the same result. How can we help connect high school players, the best of the best, all the way down to anyone that just wants to participate with the proper team, the proper school, the proper program? And I think that that comes in a lot of different forms. And it doesn't matter if you're playing basketball, if you're playing football, if you're playing esports, it's the same. I have a talent. I want to share that talent. I'm looking for an institution or a pathway to reach my goals. So how do I connect those things? And for us at eFuse, we are really committed to making sure that we can help the collegiate coach find the talent. I think that's been the most challenging when you sit and you talk, and we have for the last 8 months, we brought together some of the best, a collegiate advisory board with UCI, Missouri, Akron, Illinois Wesleyan. And we asked them, tell us your pain points. Where does it lie? And a lot of people talk about recruitment. And so how can we help them find the players? And it is hard. It's about a 1% rate when you look at finding statistics, identifying if that person's in the in high school. Where are they from? What demographic data? Do they fit? Are they capable of going to college? Do they want to go to college? That 1% rate is really tough. And I think that we can take a lot from traditional sports in saying, okay, let's identify these people. Let's give them a platform where the coaches can sort through it, make decisions, communicate with a simple one touch, and let's do it the right way. We can learn a lot from traditional sports so we don't have those hiccups, and we really can kind of take over in a really great place and provide those coaches with the proper information.
Yeah, I think the fact that traditional sports has kind of led the way all these years, it gives esports a little bit of an advantage that they don't have to recreate the wheel.
100%. I mean, there's so many things. If you talk to the best recruiters in the country in traditional sports, they'll tell you what tools are valuable and why they're valuable. If you talk to esports coaches, they'll tell you what information's valuable and why it's valuable. So for us, we just had to listen, and then we had to be the quickest actors. And so we don't think that what we're creating is perfect. But when you bring the players to the table that are the best of the best coaches, the best programs, they're going to let you know what they need to be successful. So how can we provide that value? How can we start the conversations? And then how can we get the students to join in? And we already have a great ecosystem, a great platform. We have hundreds of thousands of players, but in specifically nearly 100,000 players just in the high school ages. And so how do you educate and really explain to them that these pathways exist for not only competition, but also for careers? If you're passionate about esports and I want to be an engineer in Epic or Activision, or if I want to be in the business side of the ECAC esports and be like a Lydia Pfister, I can do those things. And that's really, really special because that's what I want to do. And that's not a job. That's something I wake up very excited to do every day.
Yeah, it's great stuff what you guys are doing over at eFuse, and certainly excited for the future projects that you're already working on. Yentl, I think part of recruitment comes from a marketing background, and your expertise in marketing, which was well presented by Nicole in introducing you. Marketing has to be part of the equation when you come to recruiting, because sometimes the difference between one school or another may simply be branding. It may simply be, what the facilities look like. Could you talk a little bit about how marketing has to be part of the overall recruiting strategy?
Yes, and thank you very much for the kind words from both of you. So one of the key tenets to marketing, to branding, to just getting people in general to buy into what you're doing is to be able to show that you're doing what you say you're doing, right? Having a static website doesn't necessarily paint the best picture of what's currently happening, right? Just because you build it that doesn't necessarily mean people will come. You have to be in the channels where people are existing, right? If you want to recruit the best students, you have to be where those students are. And most times they're looking at social media, they're not visiting schools' websites. If they don't even know that your program exists, they're not going to be looking at your school's website for an esports page, right? It's on social media that people get discovered. It's in the highlight clips that you post of your students playing. It's in the program initiatives that you talk about online. It's the connections that your schools have with other schools in, just building friendships, building those rivalry stories, the back and forth, showing people that, your students are having fun and they're getting a lot out of this program, right? So people buy into the why of what you do, right? Whether it's research, whether it's competition, whether it's about building a gaming community for mental health awareness, for diversity, et cetera, those initiatives, those are the things that people buy into. It's not just, oh, we have an esports program, come to us. Lots of schools are getting on board into adopting esports programs. What you have to differentiate yourself and build your brand around is the why are you investing in esports? What are the benefits that you're providing these students? And to those students who those benefits appeal to, that's who your brand appeals to. They're the ones who buy into the program. They're the ones who look deeper and start researching, hey, is this school right for me? Is this something I can see myself being a part of? And a static website doesn't necessarily communicate that, right? They want to see actual people having fun. They want to see authentic and engaging experiences. So that's a pretty big factor when it comes to recruitment, I would say.
And Yentl, I'm going to have a little shameless plug on your behalf with iBUYPOWER and the great products that you provide to schools. Talk a little bit about the need for, the quality of the hardware, the quality of the peripherals, the quality of the arena that's being created as part of that overall brand.
Again, students want to see themselves in a place where they think they'll get additional benefits, like especially when it comes to video games. Traditional sports, you have to find a field, you have to find a court, you have to get out there. Esports, they could play it from their own dorm room, right? So to get them out, to get them participating, you have to provide them with more than what they can already access themselves, right? So having an arena, having that dedicated space where they feel like they can be surrounded in a community that understands them, that supports them, that they can compete in, that's vitally important. And when it comes to hardware, having the top of the line hardware evens the playing field, right? If you're competing on PC that's 4 or 5 years old, you're already putting your players at a disadvantage, right? They're not able to utilize the skills and compete on an even playing field versus their competitors. And it's going to feel frustrating for them, right? Because so often the question will be, am I really this bad, or is it just my mouse not working? Is it my computer lagging, right? So we have to take those factors out of the equation so that students can actually see themselves and accurately assess their growth, right? And that's vital in competition. Losing isn't the end of everything. We teach them like failure is just it just means that's another shot at winning, right? It's another shot at figuring out what went wrong, how we can do better. But if the hardware doesn't allow for that, then you're never going to get the full picture of your student's potential.
I agree. I espouse to the theory that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, right? And I think failure is part of life because it's a learning process, but you don't want something outside of your control to be the cause of that failure or of that learning process if it can be managed and avoided.
Exactly. It's like having prescription goggles that are not accurate for you, right? How are you going to play to your utmost ability if all you're seeing is a blur on the court? You have to equip them with the tools that they need to succeed.
I couldn't agree more. And as you said, the schools that provide the proper equipment and put the students in the best place to succeed are in fact building a brand that high school students are going to want to find.
Yes, and that goes into the bit about marketing. the aesthetics do matter, right? It's the perception, it's the first impression that you make on your students. If you're not willing to invest in equipment that helps them succeed, well, then students are going to wonder, why should I be a part of this then?
I couldn't agree more. And I think maybe this generation more than others, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that pop. They're looking for something that stands out and they want to be connected to. So that's really good information for schools that are starting up to invest in the right stuff, in the better quality products, because it'll pay for itself if the students come in and want to be part of the program. Jeff, let's turn the conversation to you for a moment. Your role as the executive chairman of the executive director of the NJCAAE, and I serve as your vice chair, so I work closely with you. But one of the things that we've spent a lot of time focusing on since we started the association last September was creating a pipeline for recruitment purposes. And being in a two-year association with all the two-year institutions, you're uniquely placed to almost be in the middle of the pipeline, or sometimes maybe even to be the second part of that recruitment process. So if you don't mind, talk a little bit about that overall vision of the recruitment pipeline from high school to 2-year, and then the second part of it from 2-year to 4-year.
So if I may, thank you, Neil, and if I may actually start with that second piece with a little bit of data. So prior to the 2019 season, on the by way of comparison to the traditional sports side, as you and Patrick had discussed, we conducted at the NJCAA a survey and had a little less than 50% response rate. Despite that, over the past 4 years, more than 5,000 students have transferred from 2-year schools in traditional athletics, from 2-year schools to 4-year schools. And again, that's less than half of our members responding, 3,000. So it's a significant number. Adopting the traditional sports approach, again, I could not agree more, makes complete sense. It gives us the ability to leverage a lot of the existing relationships that are in place. And so that really, for us, has been the focus. It's taking that traditional sports model and applying it to the esports space. And so it is not uncommon for 2-year schools to have direct, close relationships with 4-year schools, just as it's not uncommon for high schools to have direct, close relationships with 4-year schools and 2-year schools as feeder programs. And so that absolutely is the approach that we're taking. And so through one of our primary strategic partnerships with Generation Esports, they are a platform provider. Our members are going to have access to thousands, literally thousands of high school athletes that are already competing on their platform. And we have, I believe, really grown the power of that access exponentially through a partnership with eFuse, because it's not just going to be the student athletes that are competing on the Generation Esports platform, but as Patrick mentioned, it's the hundreds of thousands of students that they're going to have on their platform. And so through creating that connective tissue from high school to 2-year, we fully expect and anticipate that as time passes, there will be a somewhat regional approach. Again, it's not uncommon for community colleges to partner up with 4-year schools that are nearby to serve as feeder programs. You get consistency of coaching, consistency of technique, consistency of expectations. The coaches on all levels will have a clear understanding and be able to share the expectations they have of student athletes. And so as Patrick was saying earlier, the first, and it's obviously different, I think, because in the esports space, you can compete professionally at such a young age because the lack of physical concerns and constraints, the need to go to higher education to prove your mettle, so to speak, to play professionally doesn't always exist. And so the ability to identify those students early on and to add value to the collegiate experience, I think, is what's so important.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff, maybe a quick comment on HV GamerCon this weekend. The NJCAAE will be hosting a Rocket League tournament for their members as part of the weekend. Talk about that value add to the membership, but more specifically, that value add to the players.
Absolutely, and first and foremost, well, we really appreciate the strong partnership that we have with the ECAC, and so the value add from a membership perspective is this very scenario, the ability to participate in a 4-year event where, and it's a mutually beneficial, really, for all. Our students obviously are going to have the ability and opportunity to compete in front of 4-year schools. And so that obviously creates, in many ways, it's almost like a live audition or tryout. You hear stories all the time on the traditional sports side about, I went to watch player A, but player B is the one that really caught my eye, and player B is the one that ends up getting the scholarship. And so for us, and Neil, as you mentioned, we've worked very closely on all the things that we've been building, and it's one of the reasons why we've partnered with Patrick. It's all about opportunity and accessibility. That's our primary focus. And so, so long as we're taking steps to increase exposure for our students, and through that exposure, creating additional opportunities for them, we're all in on these opportunities.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think adding the junior college, 2-year college piece to the HV GamerCon, which is the first time we've done this, I think is really going to add some value on both sides to the NJCAAE, but also to the ECAC, where they can also promote to their schools and to their coaches that there is this pipeline of students ready to come and join their 4-year program. So we're excited to be part of that. Thomas, you come to this panel from a completely unique and different perspective, and that's as an esports coach. You've been recently appointed coach at Five Towns College, and that's a program that's really just starting up. And so recruitment is extraordinarily important to you and obviously to the growth. Talk to us about that challenge now where you got the job, but now you actually have to do it. And in order to do it, you need to have the students and you need to recruit. Talk about the importance of that and maybe some of the things that you're going to look into as recruitment opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be foolish to say that when I was applying for this role at Five Towns College, my partnerships with the NJCAAE and with partnerships with eFuse and iBUYPOWER didn't help me land this role. Obviously, having access to 100,000 plus students definitely helped my recruitment efforts. And when you look at esports, Fortnite, for example, you really need only 2 players to be a truly competitive program. Rocket League, 3 players. There are a lot of similarities between traditional sports and esports, but when you look at a football team, you have to bring in the top wide receivers, the top offensive linemen. In esports, if you find 5 key players to really start your program the right way, you have a foundation to have a successful programs for years to come. But in regards to what I look for as I'm recruiting externally, I think there's 3 main stages in the recruitment process. The research phase, where I'm gaining more information, kind of reading their resume in esports and outside of esports through platforms such as NTSA or the new program that eFuse put together. The discovery phase, where I'm having preliminary conversations with the potential recruits. And then finally, the follow-up stages, where I'm looking for them to fill out the application and hopefully getting them signed onto the program. In the various stages, there's various elements that I'm looking for. For example, in the research phase, I'm looking to see their leadership skills. Were they a captain of their program? Were they involved with other activities to see if they're a well-rounded student athlete? Obviously, their GPA, because at Five Towns College, esports is under athletics, and there is a requirement for the GPA. So it'll be a disservice to the student athletes for putting on another activity on their plate, as well as to the other teammates if these student athlete recruits that I bring into the program can't even compete. In the discovery phase, when I have the preliminary call, I'm looking to see what questions are they asking. Did they do homework on Five Towns College, or are they just here to say, hey, I had an opportunity with a college coach. It's a unique opportunity, but I'm really looking for student athletes that come to the table. How will you help me? I'm interested in business. What internship opportunities will I have? How will esports help me to grow both inside the team as well as outside the team? And then after the call, do they send a follow-up note? In recruitment process, it's very similar to applying for a job. It's the little things that the recruitment manager at a company looks for, or a coach like myself looks for, and it adds up over time. And then finally, with the follow-up stage, obviously checking their Twitch. The benefit of esports, esports gives us the ability to have that first person point of view. What are they thinking? What are they hearing? But there are times where student athletes say the inappropriate things. And at the end of the day, our team is representing Five Towns College and the mission of the college. So I'm looking to see what they are doing, not only on social media, but on their Twitch streams.
I think that's a big part of this, Thomas, is character, the type of person, which is hard sometimes in the gaming world to get a sense of that. On a basketball court, Patrick can attest to this. You can see demeanor and sometimes the way a student athlete handles adversity is more important than how they handle success. And in the gaming world, that reaction may be something that is, not what the school is looking for when focusing on their mission. And I think we'll discuss more of that in a moment. Yentl, I wanted to just come back to you and the branding piece. And one of the things that iBUYPOWER has done so well is work with colleges, including in regard to their college tour program. And I know that college tour program isn't open to just any college, right? You want to make sure that it's a college that fits within the iBUYPOWER mission and the iBUYPOWER theme of doing better and providing quality hardware and programs. Could you talk to the audience here about the college tour and about that community that iBUYPOWER has really spent a lot of their time branding of themselves?
Absolutely. So a little background on our college tour program. It started out as a way to just provide local schools with, pop-up lands and things like that. We'd supply the hardware, in turn they'd give us some branding and some marketing exposure, et cetera, et cetera. But over time, it's developed in a way where we're able to provide students with the means and the guidance to create these exciting local events for themselves, right? We give them advice on setting up their own network, hosting, casting, broadcasting, organizing these tournaments themselves, securing sponsors and journalism opportunities from these events that they can write about for their schools. So college tour, when people apply for college tour, it's not just an application you fill out. They actually have to send in a proposal, a pitch deck. So right there, it starts to teach students business development, right? How do you pitch to a sponsor? What are marketing deliverables? How do you follow through with these things? How do you assess the value of what you currently have? Do we have social media that we can use to appeal to our sponsors? What can we actually provide them in return for in-kind value, or perhaps when you're asking for dollar amounts for sponsorships, right? And it's a different conversation when it comes to for-profit organizations versus nonprofit organizations, right? The buy-in from the top for the school administrator, the appeal to perhaps philanthropies or educational organizations, they value different things from businesses. And when you're asking for sponsorships from businesses, you have to understand that they're looking for different things, right? So it gets students in that and trains them into the mindset of how do we identify what our value is and how do we present it in a way that will appeal to who we're talking to. But college
Yeah,
tour itself, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead, Yentl.
Oh, so what I would do, I would literally review these proposals, work with these students, and I would fly out to the actual events. So I've flown out to a lot of different states to make sure like they understand how to set up hardware, how to treat it, how to follow through with their marketing plans, what expectations are, and things like that. And honestly, it's amazing to see how some of these schools are all completely 100% student run, right? No administrators were involved. They just gave them the space after they pitched like, hey, we want to do this event. Here's our budget that we're requesting. Once they get the green light, it's 100% student run. And that level of engagement is so amazing to see. Like when I was a college student, I would consider myself a slacker. Nothing would get me off my butt for my games. But these students, they plan for months on end. They execute within a week to make sure these events go as best they can for their community. And they're not getting much out of it, right? They're not exactly making money. At most, they can secure a prize pool of products and things like that for their community to have fun with. But they put so much time and effort into this, and it's amazing to see.
Yentl, I think all that time I was slacking off maybe in college and more than making up for it now. So I've known you for over a year and a half, and I don't think I've ever seen you slack once. So
I understand what gets people off their butt. Let's put it that way.
There you go. I think you mentioned the word casting before, and maybe for some of the audience, that's a word that may apply more to fishing than it does to esports. But talk a little bit about what that is and how that's also part of the overall branding of a school's esports program, that it goes a little bit beyond just the competition itself.
Absolutely. So there's definitely a lot more that goes into esports than just competition, right? It's not just people trying to get first in games. There's an overall ecosystem that needs to be filled. Like when you think about professional esports, it's not just players competing, it's the broadcasting team. It's the casters or hosts who provide color commentary in games that really help emphasize the narrative of the story, right? If you were, say, I would say, try watching a competitive game on mute. After 10 minutes or so, you would probably be bored out of your mind. It probably goes for basketball, golf, anything like that. It's the commentators that add flavor to what you're watching. It's the commentators that help guide you to understand what's going on the screen, what's important to look at. It's analysts who help you understand why so-and-so made an excellent play and highlights the students who made those plays, right? They provide more on top of just watching who gets to the finish line first or who scores the most points. So those are actually pretty coveted roles, and the professional industry itself doesn't necessarily have a pipeline to fill those roles either. We sort of have amateur scouting grounds-ish for competitive play, but not so much when it comes to talent, when it comes to providing, when it comes to commentators and things like that. It's very much a free-for-all right now. And there are students who are interested in doing those things. They're interested in becoming those commentators. And, and when it comes to education, that's a valuable public speaking skill, being able to communicate what you see on screen, being able to interpret on the fly, being able to improvise and add, perhaps a comedic touch to whatever that they're seeing. That's a valuable skill to have in life as well. So when you think about building out your esports program, I'd encourage you not just to look at competitive play, but to understand that in this world of digital citizenship, right, as we push towards being more online, as people need to learn more digital skills, these are roles that are important to think about providing your students a path towards as well.
Can I just add to that, please?
Go ahead, Thomas.
One of my roles as head esports coach at Five Towns College is to not only build a team, but to build a community where it's a buy-in approach from the entire college ecosystem, One of the reasons why I decided to take this job is Five Towns College is heavily invested in film production and graphic design as majors. And I saw a unique opportunity to tie in the curriculum into what we're doing in esports to build truly a community of Five Towns. So whether you're the best Rocket League player on campus or you're passionate about broadcasting, there's a place for you to showcase your skills and your passion on this program.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you said, Yentl, about the programs. I mean, we're talking about recruiting maybe from the player perspective, but we also have to look at it from the school perspective. And the more things you can offer a player, a gamer, a student, is going to make your school more attractive in their selection. Patrick, sometimes we talk about all the extras, but it still comes down to the competition. And in basketball and football, it comes down to, you know, which players are more talented. There's a lot of people out there trying to create this recruiting tool or this ability to take all of these players and put in some kind of a logarithm for us to know who's better at Fortnite or who's better at Rocket League. I know eFuse is working on such a platform. Could you talk a little bit about what your company is focusing on in that assistance to the college coaches in recruiting?
Yeah, and I just want to first say I think that we might be in the presence of the next John Wooden of esports with Thomas here. We have the 4 stages that he had. I'm going to create a pyramid, and we're going to create our own pyramid in esports now. So Thomas, I love it. I'm all in, man. You're a true coach officially, because you have to have stages, items. You've got it down. You're set. So
appreciate it, Pat.
It's for us, Neil. It truly is about bringing the players to the table. And I always like to use this example. When Zion Williamson came out of high school, everyone knew that he was the #1 player in the country. But if you were to ask the best program directors and coaches across the country, who's the #1 League of Legends player in the country, I don't think they would tell you. And that answer probably would be different for a lot of them. And we have to have a unified front to create some of this discussion. We have to start highlighting these players and creating a pathway that they see college as a valuable step to their process, because you're right, they can go play pro immediately. They can participate and make money immediately. So what is the value? And as college coaches and as eFuse and as platforms and as conferences, it's our responsibility to bridge that gap in education. We got to start educating of the value of the collegiate degree, how that can provide jobs in the future. You know, that career in esports may be a short one. It may not be as fruitful as you think it will be. But a college education is a long-term plan, and that's something that's very valuable. That's very fruitful. And so I think that for us in building the pipeline, which is where we're really focused on, is how can we not only have these leaderboards showcase the talent? Because as Thomas said, you have 1 or 2 people that are really great, you can compete. That's what makes this thing so special. There's so many players out there that are capable of competing at the highest level, but it's his job to find them. But as we create these leaderboards, it's also his job to identify which ones fit. You have to remember, even in traditional sports, you may have a list of the top 25 players, but the best programs of the world, they don't recruit all of them. They recruit the ones that best fit their program, that fit where the community that they're building. And I think that that's why when you see all of the information that we're collecting, academic preferences, goals, extracurricular activities, when you talk to the best coaches, they talk about being involved in other things, being great communicators, leaders. When you talk to the main coaches, they talk about how are you coachable? You know, how can you find out if you're coachable? They watch your VODs, they watch you play, they watch your stream. So I think that what makes this so special and what we're creating is we went to the best coaches and said, what do you need to be successful? And we build it. And so I'm just really excited about providing that. And that's going to change. It's not going to be perfect right away. But when Thomas calls and said, you know what, we should add this, this, or this because it's going to make my job easier. We like to be the best listeners and the quickest actors because that's how we build community and that's how we build trust with the college coaches. And not to go back on Yentl, if you build it, they will come if it's built right. if it's built in a way that adds value and if it's built to provide opportunity. And that's what we're about at eFuse, is providing opportunity.
And Patrick, I'm just going to follow up with this, because I think, you know, again, this pipeline that we're talking about and this platform that you're creating, there's also a last extension after college, and that's employment. That's the career side of this. And
Yep.
and I think the data that's collected now on a high school student is still going to have value when it comes time for a career recruitment. And I think, you know, what you're doing in creating that data bank now for those young people is going to serve them well. The studies have told us that Fortune 500 companies love to hire athletes.
Amen.
Because they're self-disciplined, because they understand time management, because they understand the concept of teamwork and they're natural leaders. Why can't that extend it to athletes, as I like to call them, you know, these gamers? Why can't the Fortune 500 companies or the big tech companies want to be hiring former gamers as well? And I think that, you know, if we wanted to really talk, you know, pipeline from high school to 2-year to 4-year to career, we're really creating something very, very impressive.
Yeah, you've heard me say it. Jeff has heard me say it a lot. Recruitment, retention, and placement. And that P word is the most important, because that's going to be a career. That's going to be a job. That's going to give someone an opportunity to really give back to the community and add value. And if you talk to the HR directors at these major companies, they want people that are gamers. They want people that are passionate about the sport, and they add more value that way. They don't look at it as a job. But I think that you hit on a really bunch of important topics there. The 21st century skills that you're getting about being a part of a team, communication, hard work, team building, that's exactly what this is about. And you're right. If we get more and more younger people to join the platform, to engage in esports, to have high school programs or club program, to go on to college, those people are going to be great members of our eFuse community, our ecosystem, as we like to say. And the more opportunities that we can provide into that ecosystem, internships with great companies like iBUYPOWER, you know, opportunities to play in tournaments, to showcase and to discover yourself. We truly talk about giving the invisible the power of being visible. And that's really important in the gaming space. And how do you do that? You provide them tools, you provide them opportunities, you provide them mentors, you give them these opportunities. And I think what makes this really special for us and why we're so much investing in it, the college coaches that we talk to, they do 8 people's jobs. Thomas now just signed up for eight people job, right? So the great thing about it, how can we add value by taking some of that off their plate, creating really strong best practices and standards, and providing an elite product for them to be successful so that there is more competition at the top. Until we start seeing the Maryville and the Harrisburgs and the UCIs compete for recruits, that's when it's going to change the game. That's when those recruits at the lower level are going to start to get better. That's when it all becomes really powerful. And that FOMO piece, that's going to get more people wanting to go to college, and that's going to get the professional general managers to come to college, not just challenger leagues to recruit, because they know they got the best players in their program.
I agree, and I think starting like you are at the youth level and creating that data, creating that bank of information, I think that's very valuable. And quite frankly, again, somewhat similar to traditional sports, where some kids are being watched as early as 6th or 8th grade. So why not start the esports level at the same age? Jeff, another aspect of recruitment comes from the academic side. I teach at Caldwell University. I've created an esports business management major, one of the few in the entire country. I know that's helped. I know it's part of that overall package. You come from an education background as well. Talk about the importance of that as we're growing the NJCAAE.
So, you know, I think Patrick really hit upon a key point related to this. And, you know, Patrick and I have talked about this before. He ends it with placement, it's recruitment, retention, placement. And I would insert one in between placement and retention, and that's completion. right? You got to complete before they get placed. And so all of those are connected. And for all the reasons that you just discussed with traditional sports and everything you learn, discipline, team dynamic, resiliency, problem solving, all of those things. Well, those obviously apply to esports as well. But the one benefit that esports has over traditional sports is there's a more practical application in the classroom as well. And as it relates to a variety of careers, network administration, development, network security. I mean, you can literally go on and on and on with the variety of different academic programs that are directly related to esports competition. And of course, that connectivity is getting even stronger now through the creation of esports specific academic programs. And so you've of course have the business administration side, but now we're seeing programs and content creation very similar to traditional journalism, sports journalism, esports journalism, casting, the whole 9 yards. And so there's just a lot of opportunity through esports participation to continue to acquire and hone those skills that are going to lead to the placement that Patrick was speaking about earlier. And so, combined with that, we sought out the STEM.org accreditation so that what the steps that we're taking is we want to make it even easier for our members to partner with STEM accredited high schools so that they're finding, and again, it's all related. It goes back to the recruiting piece and getting the right kids and the right kind of students and creating that. So it's one thing to have a seamless transition on the field from high school to community college to four-year school, but it's another to do that academically, right? And oftentimes there's a stigma or an assumption that's made that kids that go to a two-year school go there first because they can't go to a four-year school. Well, that's not always the case, but certainly it does apply. And oftentimes, it's not about skill, it's about the academic abilities. And so through our opportunities to get all of these academic connections made as well, we want to create the ability or the opportunity to transition from the high school to two-year to four-year, because, one of the big pushes all throughout the United States is dual enrollment, and it's called something different all across the country, but in essence, it's high school students enrolled in community colleges, two-year colleges taking courses. And so our association actually allows those students to participate if they're enrolled full-time. And through that process, we believe, again, creating that connective tissue, there's going to be a more seamless transition, because here's the other piece. One of the big reasons why that is so important and why it's been so heavily supported and promoted through state governments and local governments is the cost of education. So it's not just anymore that kids that can't qualify for four-year schools go to two-year schools. I'll be the first to admit that, I'm in my early 40s, and when I was coming up in the 80s and 90s, the perception was you only went to a two-year school if you couldn't go to a four-year school for whatever reason. Well, that's not the case anymore. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I have a daughter that's going to graduate a year early. It could have been 2 years early from a four-year school because she almost had an associate's degree after finishing high school. And as the person responsible for paying for that, I can't tell you how appreciative I am for that. And certainly I know that I'm not alone. And so removing those stigmas, creating that seamless transition, it's all part of the interconnectedness of esports. And I'll say, and I've said this for some time, and I hope this lasts, what impresses me really more than anything with esports is, at this point at least, what feels like the really altruistic approach that everyone seems to have. Everyone really, at this point, seems to be in it together to grow access, improve the ecosystem, and just make it a better opportunity for everyone. I'm sure at some point, hopefully long after I'm gone, that won't be the focus anymore, but I can't say enough right now about how exciting it is to be a part of all of that.
It is exciting. I think the mantra, the theme of being Switzerland is a smart way to go right now in terms of, you know, just trying to grow this holistically with everybody together. And eventually there'll be some splintering, but I think to get the strong foothold that we're trying here in esports, it's best when we are all working together. I did open to the panelists, I'm sorry, to the audience to submit some questions to the panel. And in the last few minutes, I'm going to look in my chat box here and see what questions we have. The first one comes from Marcel, and the question is, what kind of industry partnerships would help collegiate esport programs to get further ahead? I'll start this, but then I'll leave this open to the panel. Partnerships are really how the NJCAAE has grown in the last year and several months, how the ECAC has grown, our relationship with Yentl at iBUYPOWER, relationship with Patrick at eFuse have really helped our growth, quite honestly, exponentially, not a 1 + 1 = 2, but a 1 + 1 = 5. So we're very grateful for those, and I know that's a big part of where we are. But I'll leave that up again open to the panel to talk about the importance of partnerships in growing esport programs.
So Neil, I'll jump in here if I may. One of the common questions and the feedback that we receive is access to resources. Of course, it's no different on the traditional sports side, 2-year or 4-year. And the one primary difference, though, is there's not as much awareness on the esports side as it relates to what you need to get started. So Yentl talked about this earlier in terms of educating the students on what's necessary to run an event. Well, it is the exact same for a lot of the administrators that are building these programs. So all that to say, I believe, and this is why we as an association have partnered with a group like iBUYPOWER, identifying technology experts and providers that can provide assistance in that area. The one comment that I've always made is you can, it relates to internet speed, for example. You can have the fastest internet in the world, but if you don't have the proper equipment to drive that, it's like buying a Lamborghini and putting a Pinto engine in it. It's just not going to make a difference. And so just understanding how to leverage the resources that you have to maximize what you have. And that's for me, the technical piece.
I want to add too, I think from our end is, you know, we're really committed to amplifying the collegiate scene, right? So, you know, we just recently put out College Coaches Poll. And that's a small example, but it's really, really important because everybody needs to know who the players are. And I think that's where partnerships can really happen. Being able to provide, you know, ancillary products and features and prize pools and property, just like Jeff had just said, I think it's really, really important. And you have to invest in it. It takes investment. And I think that our big focus, and I'm sure, you know, Yentl will agree. I would love to hear. But I really believe that we need partnerships that aren't just one-time partners. They have to stay committed to growing. It's the compound effect. If you haven't read the book, it's a fantastic example. You have to stay consistent. You have to continue to build. And I think that the people that have done that and have provided that impact, and that's the North Star for us as you talk, Neil, but we have to make sure that we continue to do that and do it consistently, and that the partners aren't one-offs, right? They just throw in some money here. Let's build this together. All you know, rising tide raise all ships. That matters, but the partnerships matter along the ways for the amplification, for the growth, and for the collaboration.
Yeah, to jump in. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Oh.
Yentl.
To jump into the point about not wanting one-off partnerships, I completely agree. One-off partnerships are beneficial for no one, not only because it doesn't build relationships, but because it introduces a level of uncertainty into your
Yeah.
program. Like, will you be able to get that resource back again? What can you build and strategize around if it's not going to be here for a long time, right? So it does matter what kind of partnerships you invest in. And the best way to help you decide is to understand the focus of your program. If it's purely about competitive, then you look at the elements that make your students competitive, right? Is it perhaps a physical therapy class that helps them recover and reduce repetitive stress injuries? Is it going to be about the technology, right? Things like that. So being able to find the right partner depends on what you want to emphasize. If it's research, then you look at organizations, perhaps medical organizations, who may not necessarily understand esports, but they're open to the idea, and you have to be the authority in that space to guide them, right? Presenting yourself, presenting your program, it's not enough. You have to connect the dots for them. You have to tell them, hey, if you're interested in doing a study about how adrenaline affects young people in the body, right? We have a program that can do that. We can run these games. We can put students in these situations that stimulate adrenaline production in a way that sports just can't, right? You can replicate these trials over and over because it's just games, and playing a games of Fortnite can easily raise your adrenaline levels the same way a traditional sports would as well. So there are certain things that esports is better adapted to than traditional sports, and being able to present your program in that manner in a way that is valuable to whoever you're pitching to, it will help your program get ahead and establish yourself as a leader in the space.
I appreciate the insight about partnerships coming from two of our valued partners. It really does, you know, enhance or, you know, really explain why those relationships have worked, and, you know, because we're all thinking in the same way. And I think that's a big part of it. Last question from the audience was from Janice, asking if she recommends an esports degree be in the College of Business or Technology. Janice, I can answer that from my own experience at Caldwell University. It is in our business division, but some schools focus more on the STEM side, and so they put it in more of the technology side of their campus. I know at Caldwell, we look at it as a billion-dollar industry today and a $200 billion industry in the next decade. So we wanted to put it in the business side, but schools with strong STEM programs can certainly add an esports degree on that side of the campus as well. I want to thank everybody, the audience, for being here, for the panelists. You make my job very easy, and you make me look good, which is not easy to do. I appreciate the sacrifice of your time today, and I want to thank all of you for joining us. And also, again, thank you to AVGL for sponsoring this panel with their Intel Inspires events. Contact information for all of our panelists can be obtained through me at CSMG or in the press release that was recently put out on LinkedIn. But again, thank you everybody for your time, and we look forward to meeting with you all again.
Thanks, everyone.